Friends, chess players, good morning and welcome back. No, I haven't gone crazy. I wrote the words Spanish and simple and practical in the same sentence. In fact, today I'm going to show you the Spanish opening for the very first time. And I'm going to recommend it even at the beginner level because I'll show you a very practical line. So, let's say we're embarking on a great mission. An impossible mission, that is, to make the Spanish opening simple and practical. But don't worry, we'll manage it because I'm going to show you a rather unique variation. Enough talk, let's jump right in and see what to do. So here we have our beautiful Spanish opening, and of course the Spanish opening I'm going to show you today is a very simple one, which is the exchange Spanish. But be careful, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's not poisonous and very dangerous. In fact, I'm going to show you a plan. Really interesting, with this game played by two very strong grandmasters. The white pieces are played by deck, so a grandmaster. Over 2.6, I'm going to show you a very simple idea, and above all, extremely easy to apply. This really surprised me because here, this is the exchange Spanish, okay? So after d takes c6, at this point, this idea comes up. First of all, let's try to put a bit of context around things. The important thing, what we want to achieve in this position is this famous structure where we basically get an extra pawn in the center, so potentially we have a central majority that advances, especially in the endgame. And be careful, the importance of this game isn't just in the opening moves. In fact, this isn't a video where I just show you two theoretical moves and that's it, no. Here, I'm actually going to show you how we handle this structure to try to win the endgame, so stay with me until the end, because otherwise we really haven't accomplished anything. So this is the structure we want to achieve, but here we get it in a clever way, that is by playing the move knight to c3. First of all, let's immediately point out two things. Here, the pawn is obviously not hanging because there's the famous trick, right? Queen to d4. It attacks the knight and attacks e4, so the pawn is not hanging. 2. The main move here for white is short castling, but it's not the move I'm going to recommend to you. Why am I not recommending it to you? Because here, in my opinion, black can play bishop to g4. What is the purpose of bishop to g4? g4? The purpose is that it really bothers our knight, and so obviously we don't have our d4 moves. And if we play h3 here, there are two interesting ideas. The first is with h5. So obviously black tries to sacrifice a piece to open up this file, which is really dangerous. Then the second is simply to move the bishop while maintaining the pressure. At this point, our idea, so does it start here instead with this move? Knight to c3. What are we trying to achieve with this move? When our opponent plays bishop to g4, we are not castled yet. So when we play h3, obviously h5 makes no sense because I just capture the bishop. But even moving the bishop here at this point makes no sense because we have already defended the e4 square in advance. And so here, thanks to the move g4, we gain material and the bishop pair. So here the only thing black could do is give back the bishop pair. But honestly, this variation makes very little sense because black keeps the structural weakness, but has lost the advantage that compensated for it, namely the bishop pair. So let's say that here, knight to c3 is a good counter to bishop to g4. For this reason, here black will generally have to play a move like queen to f6 or even queen to d6. But for us, it doesn't make a difference. We'll always respond to queen f6. You'll see now we'll play d4, pawn takes, and then queen takes, and we go on to exchange these queens. The only note I need to make for you in this position is about the move, bishop to c5. Because with the move bishop to c5, we just need to know these two small things about knight takes e5. Obviously now not queen to d4, because the knight retreats, attacking the bishop and defending. But here the critical moves are bishop takes on f2, followed by queen to d4. However, I'm actually showing you this position because I want to tell you not to be afraid, because now after king to e1, queen takes e5, queen to f3. What simply happens is that we have attacking momentum against the opponent's position. And also a fairly comfortable development with d3 and bishop to f4, so for example here rook to f1, d3, and even if knight goes to g6. It doesn't matter to us, we can still play bishop to f4 and enter this position where, simply put, we're in an endgame where our opponent has a damaged pawn structure, we have a strong center, and we've also taken something away from them. The bishop pair, so actually this bishop on f2 here, you see it's just a scarecrow. In the same way, queen to g5, here too, attacking there, doesn't work because after d4, queen takes g2 as an intermediate move, obviously, queen to f3. Now, We are attacking here, and so white gets the queen exchange. And in this position, simply white has a very strong center and can then continue by developing pieces and also attacking on the g file. So just to clarify, bishop to c5 is not, let's say, a solution for black in this position. And so generally here, thanks to the move d4 for the queen, we always manage to get this position. So this is our starting position, the one we're now evaluating, especially with a view to how to play the middle game and how to play the end game. Well, the middle game here isn't hard to play as white because white's idea is simple. White has a potential advantage in the end game because obviously we have this majority advancing in the center. And another idea is obviously that if it were possible, we would be quite happy to exchange one of the bishops and regain the bishop pair. So here white is playing according to two principles. One, to reach the endgame. So wherever there are pieces that can be exchanged, we can exchange them to get closer to the superior endgame. Or otherwise, if we have the opportunity to get a bishop pair, let's look at white's really intuitive moves. The bishop goes to e3, castles long, and at this point white makes these maneuvers maybe not perfectly precise, but in the end they worked out very well. So in the meantime, plays knight to b3, just as I mentioned earlier. You see knight to c5, alternatively, of course, also bishop to c5. I want to exchange one of the two bishops, which is why black already has to take action to remedy the situation. At this point, knight to d2, that is, the knight here has done its job. It has created this weakness for black, and now let's say it tries to move on to other areas. Maybe one day it will want to be recycled this way, maybe one day it will want to be recycled. So for now it puts it back on d2, knight to g6. And now, as I mentioned earlier, in this structure, it's in white's interest to head towards the end game. So what does he do? Knight to e2 with the idea of knight to f4. You can see how simple white's play is, that is, every move brings us closer to the end game. And obviously something in white's favor is, wait, because we'll look at the endgame later, because maybe like this. Yes, okay, there's an extra pawn. You might say, well, it should be comfortable for white, of course. Now you'll see how white converts this endgame, so it will be clearer to you as soon as we get there. Here the first piece is exchanged, and then bishop to e6, a 3 just in case, we defend this pawn, and here with a simple structure we have the upper hand. On the king side, so what do? We take space on the king side. f3, g4, h4. Everything is extremely straightforward. So now we want to continue with our play on the king side. Black plays h5, which is probably already inaccurate because white continues with g5. And what is he trying to do? You see, at the first good opportunity, he goes to eliminate the pair of bishops. When white manages to do this, we can say that white's position is getting very, very good. Here, black exchanges and plays rook to df8, and here comes a great move, a really great move by white. Black here was threatening rook to f4, with which he might want to bother us, basically blocking our structure. So white plays rook to h4. And now, I invite you to watch how easily this endgame is converted. Meanwhile, white moves the rook, not so much to put pressure here, because there is no pressure, but to bring the king closer. King to d1, king to e2. Now black tries this counterplay with rook to d8. But actually, I move the knight and there's nothing there. Bishop to e2, knight to c3, attacking the bishop. So even in case of a check, I bring the king up and then you basically have to move the bishop. Rook here. It defends the second rank and rook away. And now look at this endgame, because this is the essence of the position. This is what you need to understand in order to play these positions easily, even without knowing any theory. My pawn majority acts as a shield for my king, giving me this position where now, with the pawn and the king, I keep pushing forward and taking more and more space. White now also brings in the knight. Look at how harmoniously white's pieces are playing. Look, he has positioned this knight and now it's basically time. Let's start pushing. The knight goes to e5. Do you see how it's move after move? Black is becoming more and more passive and white is advancing his pawns. Now he also takes control of the file and at a certain point captures, and it's time to push. Why is it time to push? Why? Because of the superiority of my king's position and my pawn majority. Look, meanwhile he's not doing anything. With the pawn on b7, now even in a rook endgame, it's obviously a one rook endgame. Let's see how he converts it. I capture, he captures, rook takes, and captures this pawn. But we don't care, we've sacrificed the pawn because the activity of our king and the remaining pawn will win us the game. f6, king here. And now basically king to g6. And there's nothing black can do. Because you see we're playing Porta Romana, we're playing alone. And here, after king to g6, there's also the classic tactic, right? Rook takes a3, the rook can't capture. Because obviously I promote, and of course if the rook goes anywhere else, here I can simply win in several ways. The simplest is probably to play rook to h8. And now, well, aside from a few completely useless checks, right? Aside from a few useless checks, there's nothing black can do, except of course to go and sacrifice the rook here. You see how easily this endgame was won, because this pawn majority gives us the opportunity to play these kinds of positions. So when we work and practice well with these types of structures, all we need to do is play the exchange Spanish. We set up that position, then with every piece we exchange, we get closer to the endgame, then we activate the king, activate the pawn, bring in the pieces, and the endgame is won. Do you see how simple it is to play this Spanish? So I hope I've managed to show you a main line like the Spanish, which is very theoretical. But in some way I've given you a resource to be able to play it without knowing too much theory. And simply, let's say, by understanding the strategic aspects of the position. If you want to support the channel, as always, I invite you to subscribe, give a tactical like, and leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next videos.